Good afternoon, class. My name is Cedric Patterson, and today I'm going to talk to you all about teens and marijuana. Now, to do that, I'm going to actually use three objectives. My first objective is going to be, after playing a Jeopardy-style game, which is the condition, the students will be able to, which is my SWBAT, they'll be able to describe. Describe is my Bloom taxonomy verb, which is actually on the level of comprehension. They're going to describe two ways to tell if a person has used marijuana. And they're going to do this with 60% accuracy. And they're going to actually take this information and record it onto their laptops. And that's actually my criteria. Okay. Following the unit discussion, which is the condition, the student will be able to, which is my SWBAT, they'll be able to name. Name is my taxonomy verb again, and that one is on the level of knowledge. They're going to be able to name the parts of the central nervous system that are affected by marijuana use, and we're going to do that with an accuracy of at least 50%. And then with that information, we're going to actually record that in our notebooks, and that's our criteria. Now, lastly, upon the completion of this unit itself, that is actually our condition, the students will be able to, which is my SWBAT, they'll be able to design. Design is actually the taxonomy verb that we'll be using, and that's on the level of synthesis. The two group bulletin boards, well, actually, no, it's going to be four bulletin boards. They're going to be used to decrease the use of marijuana abuse amongst teens again. We're going to do that with an accuracy of about 70%. And this information, we're going to actually record that in our laptops. Now, my icebreaker that I'm going to use today. My icebreaker today is actually talking about celebrities. And just because they smoke marijuana, that just does not make it right. So hopefully you all will just understand that celebrity has no reason for making it right. These are a few people that I know you all have seen before. Television, music, things like that. And once again, this is just part of my icebreaker. Now, starting off with lesson number one. Lesson number one, that we're going to use a lecture, as well as we're going to play an educational style game, like a Jeopardy style game. Okay, and the Howard Gardner multiple intelligence that we're actually going to use as far as the lecture, we're going to use interpersonal, verbal, and linguistics. And as far as the educational part of the game, we're going to use naturalistics because we're actually going to go outside to do this. Linguistics, logical because we're going to actually keep score and we'll be using numbers, and interpersonal. And as far as the activity for lesson number one, like I stated, we're going to go outside to actually play a Jeopardy style game. And the Jeopardy style game, once again, is going to be based upon the history of marijuana. Now, there are a couple of questions that I'd like to ask you all. Say, for instance, one of the questions would be, how long does marijuana stay in your system? And once again, you're going to be set up in groups. You're going to have a chance to answer the question. You get the question right, your group will receive 10 points. And here's another question I'll probably throw out there. Can a person actually overdose on the use of marijuana? Once again, if your team gets it correctly, yes, you can receive 10 points. Which brings us to lesson number two. Lesson number two, how smoking marijuana actually affects the brain. And we're going to use two methods of instruction. One will actually be music, and the other will be peer education. And as far as the music aspect, the intelligences that we'll use would be visual, spatial, music and rhythmic, as well as body kinetics. And as far as the peer education, we're going to use linguistics. Now, the lesson that we're going to actually do, the lesson is going to be, once again, you're just going to be in groups. We're going to do like a rap dance style motif to actually get across the information pertaining to marijuana usage. And as far as some of the questions that we'll use as far as lesson number 2, one question would be, say how many of your friends actually smoke marijuana? And then another question would probably be, can you spot some of the physical damages that smoking marijuana actually do to us physically? Lesson number 3. Lesson number 3, we're going to actually use a guest speaker. And he works for one of the local substance abuse centers here in town. And when our guest speaker come out, the multiple intelligence that we'll be using during that time will be interpersonal, verbal, and linguistics. And upon him completing his presentation, what we'll do is like a display boards or bulletin boards. And during that time, we'll use the intelligences of intrapersonal, interpersonal, verbal, and linguistics. Now, during the time of us actually doing our display board and our bulletin board, what I want you all to keep in mind is the fact that we're actually trying to get out information to the other students here at the school. And hopefully we can, do something that's going to make teen marijuana use actually decrease. Now, as far as the activity, like I said, we're going to use this bulletin board. This bulletin board is actually going to be placed around the school. There's going to be like a friendly type competition where what we'll do, we'll get with the principal and the group who actually scores the most votes for their project, they'll actually receive like a pizza party or so. So once again, be as creative as possible and do your best. Now, one of the questions that I probably ask as far as us doing lesson number 3, like once we finish listening to our guest speaker, hopefully some of that information that you receive is actually helpful. So one of the questions I would ask, was anything helpful that you all actually heard today from our guest speaker? And the reason why I want you all to be able to take this information that you've learned and don't just keep it to yourself. If you see someone who's in need and you have the information, you can just point them in the right direction. And like another question would probably be, would you be willing to actually pass on that information? And I know they're your friends and everything, but just because they're your friends, sometimes they need help also. Now, the Howard Gardner multiple intelligences that I actually used today during this time were interpersonal, verbal, linguistics, naturalistic, logical, and interpersonal. Now, I used all those during lesson number 1. Okay. Now, when we got to lesson number 2, what we did, we used visual, spatial, musical, rhythmic, and then the body kinetics, along with linguistics. And number 3, what we actually used during number 3 were the interpersonal, intrapersonal, the verbal, and linguistics. Once again, because of our guest speaker. And these are the references that I actually used today during this time. Now, if there's anyone that has any questions about anything, feel free to ask myself as well as the presenter. And once again, thank you for your time today. And hopefully you all learned something. Thank you.